Live pictures from the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos County, where Governor-elect Alfred Mutua will shortly be among the first batch of newly elected governors to be inaugurated into office. Good morning, I'm Hussein Mohammed. You're watching our continued coverage of the post-2017 elections, now clearly going to last even longer, as the National Super Alliance is expected to file a petition challenging the presidential election results. We'll update you immediately. The opposition files a petition to the Supreme Court. We also discuss one of the reasons NASA says has informed or may have informed their decision, that is the row between the government and the civil society groups, which are accusing government of cracking down on them illegally. You're watching Ballot 2017. Our guest this morning, Nelson Harvey, is a lawyer. Jennifer Shamala, also a lawyer. We'll be discussing a lot with lawyers in the days to come. Johnson Omari is a lawyer, and Gabriel Muduma, political analyst. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. As I just told you, the National Super Alliance is expected to file a petition at the Supreme Court this morning, or in the next few hours. We'll find out. Sam Gituku will be at the Supreme Court. I'll be talking to him, challenging the presidential election results. So President Kenyatta and his deputy re-elected for a second term. Odinga has termed the election result a computer-generated fraud and vowed not to accept and move on after IEBC announced Kenyatta and Ruto as the winners. As I said, we'll talk to Sam Gituku live from the Supreme Court to find out if that happens this morning. But what does this mean? Let me talk to our guests right now. First, what do you make of NASA's decision sharing the presidential election results at the Supreme Court? And I'll start with you, Jennifer.
I think it's a welcome decision. It's very, very important that we appreciate as Kenyans that we can't be deriding institutions. It's important that we have to build these institutions. So I welcome that decision for them to go to the courts. Yes.
Well, it's the only way to go. But the question that Hussein, I don't know, is which court? NASA has clearly said they have no confidence in that court. Jubilee has said they have no confidence in that court. Which court are they going to?
Okay, that's interesting. We'll talk about it later. Nelson.
It is the only option available in law, and I think what Right Honorable Omolo Odinga has indicated is now to transfer the responsibility of making good the manner in which this election was conducted now to the courts of law. I think it will be an uphill task for both the litigant as well as the court that will determine this matter to indicate to the Kenyans that there is still fidelity in the rule of law.
Okay, Gabriel.
Yeah, well, Hussein, simply put, I think it's what I'm adding on to what I told you on Monday. It was the only legal option that NASA had, and it's a good thing that they've actually brought it to realization. I don't think they are late. I don't think it's something that they really thought hard about. I think all along they knew, should this happen the way it has gone, they were going to court, albeit the fact that they have been castigating the very same court, saying that the courts are not an option. I think that is the only legal avenue that they had, and they've exercised it.
All right, we'll talk about what they may have said, or they have said against the court, and what the other parties have also said against the court. But first, what do you think informed this change of mind? Because we had James Orengo, I don't know if we have that soundbite, but we had James Orengo in Bomas clearly saying, several times he has said, that going to court is not an option for NASA. Well, yesterday when Raila was talking, when he was making this announcement, this is what he said. I'll quote him, that we had said we'll not go to court, but with the raid on civil society and the determination to silence all voices that could seek legal redress like AFRICOG and the Kenya Human Rights Commission, we have now decided to move to the Supreme Court and lay before the world the making of a computer-generated leadership. Is this the only reason you think that may have informed them to change their mind, Jennifer?
No, I don't think so. I think that what we have to understand that people like Senior Counsel Orengo is not only a lawyer, he's also a politician. So on Sunday when they went out and called for a boycott of work, they weighed their options. And when on Monday they saw the people of Kenya going out and going to work, they realized that the civil obedience strategy may not work. And thereafter, And I don't think it's the raid, as they call it, the raid on civil society, but more so what options do they have. And that was the reason that informed their decision then to go to court.
Danson?
Well, the decision to go to court has always been with the NASA. But when you look at the composition of NASA and the way they handle their matters, is that it is an entity that survives on camouflage. They never tell you the direction they are going, but you will see the direction they'll go. First, the idea that they could not unite the 5 principles. Jubilee thought they'll not unite, they united. 2, they have told everybody that they are not going to court. In my own mind, they were buying time to make Jubilee or the IBC not prepare for the case, so that once they file their matter, the opponents will find that they have been found flat-footed. So in the body language and the chemistry of NASA, they believe in that way as a political strategy. There is the legal strategy, the political strategy, and the way to sustain the anxiety.
You think this was a strategy?
It
like
might be
throw people off, that they're not going, and then they'll decide ultimately to go to court?
I believe that they had no any other option, because the only way to deal with an election dispute is through the Supreme Court. So I believe that they knew very well, and they had started this preparation long way before, not after the elections were realized. So that's why I say it might be strategic or lack of strategy. We're yet to see what they have, because what they have, if it constitutes a very potent petition, then we'll say it was strategy. If what they'll file is completely a sham, then we'll know that it was totally out of strategy. They were outpaced by their opponents.
Okay, Nelson?
I think we need to understand it from a little bit backwards position. Look at the position in time when the key principals in NASA retreated to appoint a flag bearer. I mean, there was a lot of speculation as who it was, but I think in his mind, Raila knew for a fact that he will be the flag bearer. And he has this habit of going around in circumlocution to detract his opponent, so that his decision is not countermanded by his opponents. Now, fast forward, come to the day of the election, it was quite evident that he had made elaborate arrangements for a tallying center, but a few days to the election, it appears to have been raided. Now, on the day immediately after the conduct of the election, when we were waiting for the results, actually 2 days, when for a fact it became quite clear that there was another tallying center, again it was raided. And some of these things are the ones that could have informed the strategy taken by the NASA coalition, so that they are able to conduct their preparation for this election petition in an atmosphere that doesn't have the glare and the surveillance of their opponent, because it's now an issue that is no longer in the realm of conjecture, that the opponents, the Jubilee administration, are keenly watching each and every step. So they need to be in an advantageous position where they're able to conduct their business without being interrupted, without being countermanded. I think
without raising any eyebrows, yes, without raising any antennas, so you think this is actually a strategy?
It was strategy. And
so like they knew they were going to court, but they had to throw all stakeholders, including Jubilee, of parliament.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what you believe.
Yes, and you can see it's really worked, because a day before yesterday, IBC had indicated we don't have a substantial portion of the Form 34A. A clear indicator that they were least prepared for this eventuality. Now, yesterday in the morning, just as NASA was preparing to make this monumental declaration, IBC changed tacks and said, now we have these forms we can give you. So it's yet to be seen how this will unfold.
I beg to disagree with my colleague. I don't think they had a laid out strategy, because if you remember, at the time that we were voting, the first allegation was that somebody had stolen the password of the late Chris Musando and tried to log into the servers. Thereafter, we had the statement by Musalia Mudavadi, whereby he said that they had information from insider sources that actually it was Raila, the former Prime Minister, who had won the election. The third issue is now that actually this was a computer-generated election. So these are three main issues that completely contradict each other. And we also were told during the debate that the former Prime Minister said that he had a tallying center in the clouds as well. So I don't think there was any strategy to this, to be quite honest.
then according to you it means it's actually a lack of strategy.
I think it was a lack of strategy, and the first strategy thereafter was civil disobedience. And when they called out for the people of Kenya to go out and to boycott work, and that did not work, they were then reacting to that particular situation.
Yeah, I think to a high extent I'll agree with what my sister is saying. Clearly there was no strategy. Could have been what you have an offset balance. You know, it has happened. What's our next move? You know, if you use the variant for Monday, we wanted people not to go to work. These people have gone to work. So, you know, what are we going back to? So it was more of a reactive situation than it was a strategy. Because really, if you look at you know, when you're building up a strategy, you come up with an element of objectivity. What are we, you know, you involve people. You call the likes of Dunstan, you know, and they have the legal minds. What do we have? How do we take it out there? How do we represent? So it is kind of uncouth when NASA comes and they say, you know, it is because the civil society are being attacked. Then that's why it wasn't a reason. That just happened because really it was happening. Yeah. Because if you look on Tuesday, they were saying we will tell you what to do, our next move. So on Tuesday, nobody has been attacked. No office has been attacked. So Monday, I think it's just, I think it's an opportunity that they saw and they ran into it. The problem,
on Tuesday, there was already, what is his name? Fazul Mohammed.
Yes.
He had already said KHSC should be deregistered.
Correct. Correct. He had mentioned that. And the thing is, that wasn't a bad thing. All he was saying is that there are things that you people have not done. Now,
but
timeliness, that's the only thing I disagree with. It's seriously, the timing was wrong.
But what is crucial, what we must remember is that James Orengo categorically, emphatically said that we will not go to the courts. This time we are going to the public, to the courts of the people. That was categorical.
You need to see the consistency with which NASA and its principals display the strategy. You remember even the presidential debate, Right Honorable Raila Odinga had said, I will not go unless President Uhuru Kenyatta appears. And of course it was fait accompli that Raila was not coming because President Uhuru will not be here. And then a few minutes, exactly 40 minutes past the appointed hour, he appeared. So you can be able to perceive from the consistency with which they demonstrate and implement the strategy that this is exactly what had to happen. And let's take it from a more analytic point of view. The NASA coalition is composed of very experienced lawyers. I mean, we have Kalonzo Musyoka there, we have Wetangula there, we have James Orengo. They knew exactly that under the law, they must pursue a legal remedy. And bearing in mind the handicap that they faced throughout this election, it was incumbent for them to adopt things of this kind. Now, coming back to the issue that appears to have generated a lot of heavy weather from my sister here and my brother, that there was a work boycott. Look, if we interrogate it more clearly, I think the media has some blame to share. I think that call was just addressed to the people that Raila and Orengo was speaking to, the bereaved in Bandari and Kibera. I don't think anybody
was addressing his supporters.
No. He was addressing his supporters, and I agree. You see, I think where I'm saying they were caught off guard in matters not having any strategy, because they didn't have a strategy, and that's you know, they had made their preemption. They had made it very clear, we are not going to court. And all of a sudden they realized we need to stir emotions and tell people, this election has been stolen, let's go to the streets. Now, when that didn't work, and people started castigating violence, when international observers gave a clean bill of health to the election, they were wondering, what's our next move? They thought you'd rile people, go out, be violent. That did not happen. Governors started speaking, and they spoke so. They said, you know what? This is my city. We need to move on. Life must come to normalcy. That is something probably never expected. NASA never expected. But moving to court, Hussein, they've already preempted in that they are telling the courts, we have given you a chance to redeem yourself. That just tells you, you know, it creates a very glaring difference by you telling this is something we did not believe in, but since we are going there,
we're going there. About the politicians and attacking the judiciary and whether, I mean, they were being warned all through to be very careful when you're talking about the judiciary, because some say the judiciary can also be criticized. But what impact will that have in this case? But let me just quote what Orengo said. Going to court is not an alternative, because Harvey is saying this was a strategy, which you also agree with.
What I'm saying is, Hussein, this country has become so ethnicized that anything called strategy, so long as it is for NASA, Jubilee will call it non-strategy. Anything that Jubilee do from the lenses of NASA is non-strategy.
Okay.
My point where I come from is a question that is this. Lack or availability of strategy will be seen on Friday, the last date when the real petition is filed.
But I want you to listen to what Orengo said. I quote him, going to court is not an alternative. We have been there before. Now, what do you make of that? Is that strategy? Is that somebody saying he has no hopes in going to court, and I mean, he doesn't have hope in the court process, and there's no need to go to court?
First and foremost, NASA was not just addressing their supporters in Kibera or Mathare. NASA had over 6 million votes. They were addressing their entire support across the breadth and the width of this country. And when they said going to court is not an alternative, it was to put in the minds of their supporters that the only way we can have something done or achieve what we want is through civil disobedience.
Okay.
The way I look at it, Hussein, when senior counsel says we shall not go to court, is it strategy? My position has always been that you look at the ICC cases. There is the legal strategy of battling in court. Right? When President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto and the others were at the ICC, the lawyers, the three of us, and our colleagues were busy with the legal arguments. Outside here, there were massive prayer rallies. What happened? It was a mistrial. Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are free. So either NASA has adopted that strategy that, look, we will go to court, but we are telling that court, we are watching you. We are watching you. So in this aspect, this finds Jubilee off guard. If it's true that that petition will be escorted by 1 million people, then as the matter is proceeding, there will be 2-3 million people seated outside the Supreme Court. Will judges not listen to what is outside? Am I likely to see also Jubilee say, when we'll be doing our response to that petition, come with the 10 million people? This is a quasi-legal process and definitely a political process. So whoever will galvanize the bigger muscle in terms of political strategy will carry the day. Yes.
What you're saying is that whoever wins this case politically, outside the courtroom will win the case.
The legal aspect of the IBC has pronounced itself. Now what we have is a judicial process clothed in a political environment. Supreme Courts normally are not per se political, are not normally legal questions. So what NASA is doing, I'm saying NASA is taking two aspects. We shall be in court, but we shall be trumpeting. Are you getting the pressure? The pressure outside, the temperature is going to go 1,000 degrees centigrade. Jubilee will have to follow. Because remember, when the case about where the results of the final results will be announced, it was very clear. Pressure from the political class of NASA made the court either cave in or listened to it. When the president in
that decision was made because of what they said outside.
I'm saying, they have said it, also NASA have said that when the president and the deputy made a serious attack on the judiciary from Baringo, all the cases that have gone to court have won. So there is this question, Hussein, where are the IBC commissioners? They had the security of tenure. The politics of the day swept them. Ask PLO Lumumba, when the politicians' guns landed on the EACC door, he had to vacate. So whenever the politics takes center stage, any institution that will survive, I fear.
I think I need to interject here. I think it's very important that as lawyers we appreciate the fact that the judges cannot and should not be swayed by political considerations. And indeed, the Chief Justice himself, the President of the Supreme Court, is on record of having said that they will not be lynched by the political class. Their decisions are anchored in the doctrine of the independence of the judiciary, and that is precisely why they are judges.
So, what happens out of the courtroom, Lord?
Permit me to chip in.
Yes.
I think we need to realize the environment within which the judiciary is working right now. At one point in time, when it appeared to be that the High Court, the Court of Appeal, was making pronouncements which, in the eyes of Jubilee,
were
favorable to NASA, then Jubilee came out with a lot of noise, a lot of heavy weather, to indicate that they didn't have any confidence in the judiciary. Now, within a matter of few days, there was some ambulation in the constitution of the judges sitting in the High Court and the Court of Appeal, and in a quick turn of events, we saw the tide going in favor of Jubilee. Now, in my theory, I think NASA, and in particular Orengo, is passing a message to the Supreme Court judges. And we need to bear in mind that the Supreme Court is one such a court that you cannot go and say, I do not want this judge to sit. There are only 7 judges. And that in my theory, I think we have what we call a jurisprudential quotient upon which we can profile positively, not criticize as some of our colleagues with less advantage in the matter of litigation have done before. We can affirmatively say that within the Supreme Court as it sits now, we have about 5 judges, sorry, we have about 3 judges who I can profile as positivists. These are the ones who will make the decision plain and simple as per the law.
In the Supreme Court?
In the Supreme Court.
Which judges are you talking about?
Then, let's go in the order of their priority. We start with the Chief Justice himself, Justice Maraga, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, and Justice J.B. Ojwang. These are positivists. They will tell you the law as it is. In fact, if you read their decisions, you may not find anything stellar of circumlocution or deceit. And then we have the theorists. These are the ones who have had a foundation either in academia or in the civil society. And this will find the likes of Justice Joaquin Dungu, you'll find the likes of Justice Mokin Wanjala. Now, these are the category of judges that will use the law as a navigation tool to indicate to the litigant why the issue should be like this and why it should not be like this. Now, these are the crop of judges that require a lot of explanation as opposed to those who are positivists. And we'll see it from a magnifying glass. This is black and white. And then there's the borderline. And in this category, you need to take in the new entrants, Justice Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu and Justice Lenaola. Then he whosoever is advancing this case before the Supreme Court has to proceed with utmost precision. If your case is based clearly on the law and on the facts, then it will be your responsibility to convince the positivist. If your case is based on theories, then it will be your responsibility to convince the theorists. And then you need to dig in and ensure that the borderline judges are also within tow. And that is clearly the message that the NASA coalition may have wanted to pass across.
By making such pronouncements.
Exactly.
Okay. And let's hear one of those pronouncements by Raila Odinga yesterday when they were addressing the media and saying they will go to the Supreme Court. If we have it right now.
We had said that we will not go to court. But with the raid on civil society and determination to silence all voices that could seek legal redress, like the AFRICOG and the Kenya Human Rights Commission, you have now decided to move to the Supreme Court and lay before the world the making of, and to move to the Supreme Court and lay before the world the making of a computer-generated leadership.
Right, that's not actually the bite, but this is what Raila Odinga said. Even as we go to court, we are cognizant of the fact that ever since Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto publicly won the judiciary, the IBC has not lost a single case in court. We can listen to that.
You go to court, you are cognizant of the fact that Ever since Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto publicly won the judiciary, the IEBC has not lost a single case in court. We have decided to move to the Supreme Court, despite the history and under the recent circumstances. In similar circumstances, in 2013, we moved to the Supreme Court to challenge the declaration by IEBC of Uhuru as President-elect. The manner in which the court handled that petition was a travesty of justice. The court decided all interim applications in favor of Mr. Kenyatta.
This is what you're talking about, Harvey, as this. Okay, according to you, this is well in order.
This is well in order. And see, we need to see how did we find ourselves here. The Supreme Court was put in the Constitution specifically to determine the presidential election petition, because there were failings before. And we'll start with the case of Matiba versus Moi, and we'll go to the case of Kibaki versus Moi. And it needs to be understood, especially on the part of my colleagues who appear to have allegiance towards the Jubilee side. The reason as to why we need a consistency in the manner in which decisions are made by the court is not to appease the political environment at that point in time. Because who was complaining during the time of Matiba? Who was complaining during the time of Kibaki? Let's fast forward. When we had an increase in extrajudicial killings in the purge against Mungiki, the majority of people from central Kenya came and asked, why is Minister Michuki doing this to us? And he said, well, the law we sought to change was just targeted towards Moi. Now that he's not here, we need not do that. So people must realize that the law is supposed to be there for continuity, not just for now. The more reason as to why I think it was quite prudent on the part of Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga to indicate to the court, much as we do not have confidence in what you've done lately, I think we're giving you this opportune moment because you are the only court that we fought for in the trenches to ensure that at the point in time when we have a dispute as regards a presidential election, we're not taken back to the position in Matiba versus Moi, neither are we taken back to the position in Kibaki versus Moi.
I'm glad that my colleague has mentioned the trenches. I found that statement by the former Prime Minister extremely disturbing. Why do I say so? The President of the Supreme Court at that time was Willie Mutunga. Willie Mutunga was his brother in the trenches. Willie Mutunga was detained on just before the day of the coup d'etat in 1982. Willie Mutunga is the father of the civil rights movement in this country. Yet that decision of the Supreme Court was a unanimous decision. 3 judges are no longer on that Supreme Court bench. When we talk about the Kibaki petition and the Matiba petition, we're talking about pre-Constitution of 2010. And when you ask the Supreme Court to redeem itself, it's actually an attack on the President at that time, who is now an envoy, a Commonwealth envoy in the Maldives. You've actually accused him. You've actually brought down his reputation.
Yeah, because he goes ahead to say the court can use this as a chance to redeem itself, or like in 2013 it can compound the problems we face as a country. What you're saying is this is undue pressure on these judges.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
And undue pressure, how can you suggest that that court had been compromised when it was, 1, a unanimous decision, when 2, the President of that Supreme Court is Raila's brother in the trenches, the former Prime Minister's brother in the trenches. Was he compromised? Was undue pressure put on him?
That's what I was saying, and actually I'm just amplifying the point that Shamala is making. And you see, unless you are very categorical of what you're saying or what you believe, the facts that you have, the evidence in this case, then you don't have the right to preempt or to kind of, to me, I take it as a threat, as a common Mwananchi, I take it as a threat because you're telling the court, this is the only chance you have to redeem yourself. It's more like saying in 2013, all right, we won again on the Supreme Court, but you denied us that verdict, which we all know the evidence that was presented, and my good lawyers can tell you here, was not enough. Same as what we are having right now. Do you really think, and I was watching one of your shows yesterday, and there was, this legal mind who actually asked, yes, you can actually entice the public to think there is something happening when it comes to the computer-generated mathematics, as you put it. But will you also be able to push that point forward to the Supreme Court that the form itself was hacked? This is a legal mind. I'm not actually the one who's saying it. I'm just taking words from his mouth. And so I was looking, I was just spending myself in, how would you argue that case? If you go to a Supreme Court, they will base their judgment on the evidence that you bring. And so to me, what I think what they should be calling for is NASA to put together the evidence that they have, because that is what will make or break what they are taking to the Supreme Court.
Okay, that's a very good idea.
My suggestion, the first question when you gave me chance, I asked, which court? To Jubilee, the court is an arm of NASA. It's actually a surrogate of NASA. To NASA, from yesterday's statement by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, retired Prime Minister, the court is an arm, an extension of Jubilee. So the question that every Kenyan is asking, to the exclusion of around 4,000 or 5,000 politicians, do we have a court or we don't have a court? The political class has gone up to destroy the courts. The attack of the courts, so long as it's coming from NASA, Jubilee is saying the court must be respected. When it comes from Jubilee, NASA says the court must be respected. But nobody is saying that our party is doing it wrongly. So I expect the three guys here who seems to have taken a political position to agree that the independence of the judiciary is above reproach.
But maybe because I asked them the question that I've also asked you, you've responded to, what do you make of what Odinga said?
It is wrong. Nobody should attack the judiciary. I totally...
So you're saying he attacked the judiciary?
He attacked the judiciary.
By saying that he attacked the judiciary.
That was a serious intimidation. When you're telling the court that we give you now a chance to redeem yourself, what's the difference between intimidation and attack of the judiciary? Raila Odinga is plus 6 million. Uhuru Kenyatta is plus 8 million. Let's assume that the results that the IBC has provided for are real. So when you hear 6 million people, their spokesman attacking the judiciary, 7 guys, is it fair? So in my own perspective, I'm looking at the millions of Kenyans who put up the courts and clothed them with such independence to make decisions for God's case. Let us respect the institutions, and let us not forget and go into the zero type of approach where when you're in Jubilee, you see nothing wrong when Jubilee attacks the judiciary. Or when you are in NASA, you see nothing wrong when NASA attacks the judiciary. The judiciary should be left to make decisions. If they make the decision, and the decision is not in your favor, amend the Constitution. We amended one, created a Supreme Court. Let us create a super court so that you can go and appeal there. But you cannot attack the judiciary and set traps.
Hussein, permit me to delve into this issue. I think if you watch the movie by Sylvester Stallone, No Law, No Man, and then compare the sequence of events in the Torah, the book of Judges comes immediately after the book of Joshua. And it is for that reason that I think the judicial authority that is enjoyed by the Supreme Court and any judge is derived from the people. It is the people who created these courts. And if the people feel through their representative who commands a big following that the courts have not been doing the correct thing, they have a responsibility of pointing it out to them. Now, let me go back to the issue that Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga said, that the court has an opportunity to redeem itself. I think in the legal fraternity, there is a conformity of thoughts that the case decided in 2013, Raila versus Uhuru Kenyatta, was bad law. And if you were to conduct a census amongst the lawyers, the verdict would be 90%. It's bad law. It was not determined on the merits of the case. And I do not want to blame the Supreme Court by that time or the individuals who forwarded the case there. I think the court was still at its nascent stage. The Constitution was only 2 years old. This was actually, so to speak, the first substantial case that the Supreme Court was handling. And then if we interrogate the manner in which the Supreme Court has handled cases subsequent to the one in issue, Raila versus Uhuru, the case of Shabal and Joho, the case of Steve Kariuki versus Michael Wanjohi, the one that determined for a fact the finality of the tally at constituency level, you can see a development towards achieving greater good. And this is the emphasis upon which the people of Kenya, through their representative, must always remind the judiciary that judicial authority is derived from the people. And the moment in time the people are not happy in the manner in which the individuals, now the judges, who in my theology I espouse, were created pursuant to the directive that was given to Joshua, that conglomerate amongst the groups individuals that are wise, individuals that are without blemish, you understand, and give a directive to them to determine the disputes amongst the people. And as and when it becomes quite clear, and judges are human beings, they do not reside in heaven and descend on earth and then go in the heaven. They're human beings. They're bound to err. They're bound to have political affiliations. They're bound to have ethnic affiliations. So they must always be reminded of their fidelity to the law. And I think to that extent, the pronouncement by Raila Odinga is quite in order. I fully agree with it.
So I mean, where do you draw the line between now attacking the independence of the judiciary or criticizing the judiciary? You all agree, first you all agree that the judiciary should also be criticized just like any other institution.
Yeah, but not attacked.
Okay.
But not attacked.
Okay, I'll get this. You'll respond to that, Jennifer. Let's take a look at what Uhuru Kenyatta said during the campaign trails. And this is another thing that people talked about and warned the political players from engaging in talk that maybe many have interpreted to be as an attack on the judiciary. Let's have a look.
Mimi nataka niwaambie wenye koti tumewaheshimu, lakini msifikirie heshima ni uoga. Na sisi hatutakubali wenzetu watumie makoti na kuintimidate IEBC wakifikiria ya kwamba watashinda kupitia mlango ya nyuma. Hakuna.
So this is what Uhuru said. There was a lot of criticism after this. In fact, NASA's President Raila talked about this yesterday, saying since Uhuru and Ruto talked about this, according to them, no other decision has gone out of favor of IEBC. IEBC has won in every other case after this pronouncement, saying it must have had an effect. I'll go back to Harvey very briefly, Jennifer. Harvey, is that an attack, or is that still in order, just like you said, Raila Odinga is in order?
This, in my view, is a complete attack. And I'll give you a very practical example. When I was much younger, I handled a very controversial case during the Mugiki crackdown. And the judge, who is now a very prominent judge in the Supreme Court, had ordered the production of this suspect who was being held in Communicato. And at one point in time, I met the judge and asked him, why did you order the arrest of the police commission? Told me, listen, Harvey, the policeman opens my door to this chamber. The policeman drives me home. I need to be careful in the manner in which I conduct myself. Now, there can be no doubt whatsoever, as day succeeds night, that the moment that pronouncement was made, the judges were intimidated. We saw in the Court of Appeal several judges excusing themselves from handling this matter. So it's not an issue that we can say it is in the realm of doubt. This is a factual scenario. And truth be told, the judiciary is an arm of the government. When the chips are down and the superior most arm of the government, which is the executive, says you must toe the line, and I've indicated much earlier that these judges are human beings, they will not run away in the evening to go to heaven, then such a threat becomes a reality. And I think, in my honest view, what leaders ought to do is not to intimidate. Because if you say, tumewaheshimu lakini mtajua sisi si waoga, what do you mean sisi si waoga? It means we have the instruments of power, we have the weapons of coercion. That is not a statement that a judge is supposed to sit with when he's determining a dispute. And
that will have an undue pressure on judges. That's
exactly.
What you're saying.
Yes.
No, so what is the difference? They're saying what Raila said yesterday.
Yes.
We also have undue pressure. And we actually saw again the NASA leadership, I think it was Wetangula,
yes.
During the campaigns when this issue, there was a court ruling before the appeals court made the ruling on the constituency level being the final tally for the presidential vote, saying we will not accept any other ruling. before that ruling was made.
Now,
So isn't that also undue pressure on judges?
Yeah, I think as far as we need to be candid, I think what Honorable Wetangula said that time was wrong and will not defend it. If a decision has been made by a court of law, you must comply with it. You can criticize it outside, but you must comply with it.
Let us hear from the two, whether the president,
I think
whether it was an attack from Jennifer and Mudoma.
Abia said very well, the president was an attack, but the Raila Odinga's wasn't. But Wetangula's was also an attack, that's what you were saying.
The Chief Justice was very clear, and I said earlier on that they will not be subjected to any form of public lynching by the political class. Now, what we have to be also very careful about is this narrative going out there about all sovereign power belonging to the people of Kenya, which it does. All sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. It can be exercised by themselves individually or through their elected representatives. How is it exercised by themselves individually? When they approach, for example, the constitutional courts. Okay? But we have elections, and then we exercise it when we're delegating this sovereign power to our elected leaders. Now, the subliminal aspect of all sovereign power belonging to the people of Kenya, and if the power that we have delegated to the three arms of government, if they do not rule in our favor, then we will take control of the process as the people of Kenya. And that simply equals a revolution.
Okay. From what you heard, Jennifer, from what you heard Kenyatta saying, was that a threat to the judiciary?
It wasn't a threat. It was an expression. It could be deemed to be intimidation, and I have said very, very clearly that the Chief Justice came out very, very clearly, and he said, we will not be bullied by the political class. Now, what's crucial and what's important from that is we understand and we appreciate now that actually the judiciary is independent. It is one of the arms of government, one of the independent arms of government. It will not be threatened either by the executive or the legislature. And in the past, their decisions have reflected as much.
Okay, I know you want to comment on that.
The answer is very clear. You've seen a census, a synovate here.
I'm very clear. I've not made the mind.
Let us hear whether the president
do the poll.
Yeah, then we do the poll.
You see, first of all, I castigate any person, a politician or otherwise, who uses undue pressure, all right, or harasses the sanctity or the independence of the courts, including the Supreme Court. Whether it's the president, the opposition leader, that should not happen. But Hussein, there's something I'd like you to do. If you can get that clip again, play it, and I'll tell you. The last time we were here, I told you, and many people actually went with the directive that I was saying. The president, if you hear him word for word, he was not talking. He was not addressing the Supreme Court. He was not addressing the court. He was not addressing the court. He was not addressing the court. Listen to what he says. And I've argued here time and time again. He was saying, and he was talking to the opposition. Hang on a minute. You said yours. Let me just tell you what. Let me tell you what the president was saying. No.
Just tell me to you continue. Exactly. Let me make his point. Then you continue.
You see, during that event, which was somewhere in Baringo,
yes.
Marakwet,
yes.
Somebody stood up and said that Maraga is a judge. If he wants to be the president of this republic, then he has to put his name on the ballot.
If you want to join,
we are talking about the president.
But
we are talking about the president. We are talking about
the deputy president speaking.
Exactly. I'm talking about the president. Forget what the deputy or whoever was there said. I'm talking about the president. Because this has been there as the president attacked the court. It's like me saying, forget about what Musalia said. Forget about what Angula said. We are talking about Raila and Uhuru. All right? So mine was, he was addressing the opposition. And you'll agree with me. That's what he said. And he said, do not allow your courts. We will not allow your courts to be used to intimidate IEBC. All right? He was talking directly to the opposition. And that is something we've twisted very well. But on the other hand, I agree, and probably Danson will support me on this one. He thought I'll go the other way. Any person, whether the president or Raila Odinga, they don't have a right to castigate the Supreme Court.
Okay, that's
my take is this. I totally agree with my good friend Gabriel. Say he's talking of that the president was addressing that NASA owned courts. They don't own any court in this country. So there is no court that you are saying that he was addressing NASA owned courts. Let us be very clear. the sanctity, the independence of the judiciary cannot be attacked by anybody. Anybody aggrieved, and this is the problem we have this nation. We have people who have been reduced into sycophants who can never tell their leaders this is wrong. Look at the likes of people like Michuki. Look at the likes of people like the late Nkaiseri. Look at the people who could stand for the public good and tell the leaders that Raila Odinga, you are my leader, but this is wrong. Uhuru Kenyatta, you are my president, but this is wrong. The law states this. What we suffer in this country is people who have been caged into the cheerleaders. People who are there to look at the body language of their leaders and cheer it. We need now to start moving ahead and saying, let us stand by what the law says. It does not matter.
But when we began this discussion,
yes,
you gave a comparison with what happened in the ICC.
Yes.
And you said, and I want the others also to weigh in on this,
yes,
that what happens outside the courtroom will also have an impact.
It has 100% political.
First of all, the ICC is a very different setup. Okay, it is an international court where countries decide whether they want to be members of the Rome Statute or not. It is a court where if you're not a member of that statute, like in the case of Sudan, where Bashir was, the issues are then taken to the Security Council, which is a political composition of superpowers. And it is at the Security Council where resolutions are made. Okay, it is political by nature. To try and equate the ICC with our judiciary here, I think is a bit insulting. Our courts are the courts that we have are anchored within the constitution of this country. Our legislature is anchored in the constitution of this country, and so is our executive. So I wouldn't compare the two at all.
And you don't think whatever happens after the court will have an impact?
No, the ICC is a political court, and it has political considerations to take into account. The judiciary of this country is an independent judiciary.
Right, Nelson.
I think the judiciary is a very sterilized environment in which many microbes thrive. Now, the sterility of this environment is equated to a laboratory. You're testing whether there is a pathogen in somebody's blood, but you give it the environment that it would have otherwise thrived, but in a secluded area. And that is what we call judicial independence. But it does not mean that the judge is away from the realities on the ground. It's not mean that the judge will do what they always tell us, and which in my opinion is erroneous, that they do not consider paper cards as evidence. They do not consider clips from this transmission as evidence. It is evidence. And because they occasionally resile into that cocoon of isolation, they miss the point. They ought to be alive to the facts within the environment, but nonetheless, act as if they are within the laboratory and give a good diagnosis as to what the problem is. And that, to me, is the clarion call within which judges must survive. Take, for instance, remember the case we saw on TV in 2007 of a policeman in Kisumu pumping bullets on 3 gentlemen who were down. What happened when the matter went to court? That there was no evidence, but all of us know that the 3 gentlemen were killed by that policeman. And when this case went to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal deprecated the conduct of the High Court and said, no, this is nonsense. Everybody knows in the country that this is what happened. So that the judiciary must always know, and I think in my theory, which may not find comfort in many amongst this table, is the fidelity of the law can only be achieved if it is exercised in public, where everybody is able to know, where the judge is able to understand this is the environment. But it does not mean they must run away from the law, because a decision is based on the law and just.
Right. In other jurisdictions, we've seen where they have juries. They are secluded from whatever is happening, so that it may not have an impact on them making a decision ultimately. Because you may not have control, and nobody has control of what will happen in public, what will happen outside the courtroom, and what may actually be given more prominence and actually sway the judges to rule in one way or another. I know this is not the case, and it cannot be the case in Kenya's law, but Do you think that will help in such a situation in this country right now?
I think in Kenya we cannot benefit from such a scenario of the jury. Much earlier, during the growth of the judicial system here, we had assessors who used to sit with judges in murder and offences. But it turned out that most of these assessors were compromised as opposed to what happens in the United States. That is the reason as why we do not have assessors anymore.
Yeah.
But you see, the manner in which a judge is trained, in fact, the principle is that a judge is a lawyer before he becomes a judge. And it is the presumption that the judge must always know the law, even as he treads in the treacherous and perilous path of the noise of the litigants. He must listen to the noise, but he must differentiate between the chaff and the wheat and say, this is the correct, the lawful and the just path.
Okay. But I think what is extremely important for us to understand is how these judges are appointed. They're appointed by the Judicial Service Commission, which is comprised of different interests. So in a sense, the representatives of the people, the representatives of the bar, etc., are there. And we are certain, when we passed this constitution, we knew, we were satisfied that the Judicial Service Commission was able enough to put in place, to vet, to interview the best people at the Supreme Court.
Right. Let me finalize my submissions before I go to Court Hussein, if you'll allow me. One, it's very clear, the 7 judges voted. They either voted for Ukuru Okot or they voted for Abdul Dida.
Yes.
That is one question. And I agree with my learned senior that the judges don't come from heaven. They voted. They are either Jubilee in terms of political orientation or NASA or in any way. Number 2, he talked about different schools of jurisprudence, different schools of how you interpret the law. He talked about those people who believe in the question of God, the naturalists, that honestly, it's moral. This thing can't happen. He talked about people who believe if the law says it, that is the way it is. There are those who are realists, who will tell you, if we undo this decision, are we likely to make every other person who was elected, more than 10,000 guys who are elected, a new general election coming in, even from the MCA in my constituency? Those are the realists. There are those ones who are postmodern. They are saying, we don't care. What does the law say? If the law says it, let us. So it will depend on the composition of the philosophy of the judges. And that composition, that legal orientation, that schooling, that mindset, how do they perceive issues? And to them, how do they see the political aspect? When in 2013 the decision of Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta was made, there were judges who were holding conferences and saying, we are not comfortable dealing with the political matters here. You guys solve your matters at the polling station. If you get a judge who has that perspective, that if you lost, don't come here for us to do a remedy. So it will deal with the total composition of the women and men of the Supreme Court, how they will perceive the consequences that Raila Odinga has brought up. Lastly, what is before the Supreme Court, for the benefit of Hussein of every Kenyan, is not about Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. It is the question about how do Kenyans continue living. Are they going to live pursuant to the Jubilee Manifesto? Or are they now changing the policies and take the NASA Manifesto? So this narrative that it is about Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta before the court is different. And that is what every lawyer will call upon the Supreme Court to look further and say, it's not about the robots who voted. It's about this country. What is it that we want to develop? And this being the final place for call, there is no appeal, there is no room for appeal.
But on paper, according to the layman, on face value, it should be about the evidence that will be produced and the election process.
And lastly, there has been a misnomer that in the 2013 judgment that came out, it will bind these judges. Under the law, they have the same jurisdiction. They can run away from the decision of the 2013 decision and make their own decision. So are we going to see novel judges? Lastly, whether the decision...
That's the last time.
That's the last time lawyers will always beg for that, for more one extra
Then you need to go to court.
Then I need to go to court to make it more clear. The value of the petition. Kenyans, we are going to benefit tremendously from what the judges are going to pronounce themselves. The development of the democratic space, the development of the electoral process. Every time there is litigation, we move a step further. So it is not only academic, neither is it going to be the winner takes it all. Much jurisprudence on how we are going to conduct ourselves, either in 2017 or 2022, will come out.
Very briefly, your last one.
I think, actually at this rate, I think I need to become a lawyer. but I think that which comes out, Hussein, you've mentioned something about other jurisdictions where you have, you have jury, selected your peers, and I've always wondered, if we were to get something like that in this country. I don't know whether we are still so divided that we cannot have something like that happen, but probably there's something we need to look into in the near future. It may happen, it may not happen. But I've known certain jurisdictions whereby even the prosecutor will tell you how your case will go. You've had cases where the lawyer will sit down with the prosecutor and they make a deal. They say, you know what, instead of going through this, or given the evidence, given the evidence that you have, this is what you expect to have. And then you'll also have some will come and tell you, if this is what you have nothing. Surely you have nothing. And I think that in our case is also lacking, because going by the evidence that may need to be produced, and that's why I'm liking when you talk about the Supreme Court. This is not a case where you have a one judge sitting, so where you can question objectivity. You have 7 people seated, and everybody at one point, like my good friend Omar is saying, that every person have their own mind. They'll go out and think, what is the best way? Is this the truth? When you bring the newspaper clippings, I mean, can we go really with this? Is this what these people have come up with? Does it compound for us to give a decision based on, somebody who went and cut a newspaper? Does it mean anything? What is the evidence presented? And I think world over, in many places where the judiciary is in upright mode, you will go by the evidence that is produced. And I think that's what we need to celebrate about.
Jennifer, your final words?
My final words are that, we should remain calm. We shouldn't be anxious. I need to, my colleague was saying that the judges were sitting in places and having discussions. And I think that he may have been alluding to sentiments that were expressed by some of the Supreme Court judges about the personal challenges they went through while, having to sit on this hearing of the 2013 and make those decisions. And it's important that we have to have extreme faith in the Supreme Court of this country. We must have faith in these judges. I believe that they will not be intimidated. I believe that ultimately they will rule basically and judge on the evidence that is placed before them.
Harvey, your final words?
We do not have any other option but the option that succeeded the book of Joshua. It is the judges. And to that extent, however much any of these key individuals involved in this litigation may not have faith, I think try and acquire some little knowledge, because with knowledge then faith shall grow. The courts are the only known avenues through which to redress our problems. And until such a time, I think we'll have to do with it.
Okay, interesting times ahead for this nation. Of course, this is the discussion we're having is not to say that the judges of the Supreme Court are not competent. It's just that there'll be under a lot of scrutiny for the next 2 to 3 weeks. About the burden of proof, of course, lies with the National Super Alliance, but of course there'll be a lot of scrutiny on the judges. Thank you so much to our guests, Gabriel Muzuma, political analyst, and lawyers, Jennifer Shamala, Dunstan Omari, and Nelson Harvey. Thank you so much for making time for us. We're taking a break now. Palo 2017 continues after this break.